Don't hang up that phone. We've found what you're looking for. Welcome to the Let's Talk Cabling Podcast with Chuck Bowser, RCDD. Well, seeing how we're pulling Category 6A, the most powerful twisted pair in the world, you gotta ask yourself this one question. Did I pull 295 or 300 feet? Well, do you feel lucky? Do you, punk? What exactly does RCDD stand for? Registered Communications Distribution Designer. Just the expert you need to ensure your cable plant performs exactly as designed. The elite professional, knowledgeable, and experienced in leading-edge ICT design principles. Now, send the new guy to the truck for a bucket of dial tone and the cable stretchers, while you listen to an informative program on telecommunications.
Thursday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That can only mean one thing. It is time for After Hours Live with Chuck Bowser, RCDD. To ask your favorite questions on communications cabling, project management, estimation. George Humphrey's in the house. Even career path questions. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to 2023. I hope everybody had a good holiday season. Hope you got everything Santa Claus promised you. We plug in the power cord into my computer so the computer does not die on me. So let's say goodbye to 2022. Yeah, goodbye 2022. Welcome 2023. Glad it's here. 2022 wasn't a bad year, but I'm looking forward to 2023. We are January, and I got to ask you guys one thing. Are you guys going to the Bixie Conference in February? If you go, you might see me. Robert is in the house. Hello, Robert. How you doing, my friend? So we always start off every Thursday night with, what are you drinking? Tonight, Chuck is drinking water. I know it sounds kind of boring. I'm drinking water. Okay, what can I say, right? I didn't have a chance to fix myself a Zevia soda. Here's a funny story. I'm on a couple different Facebook pages, and I answered this question on one of the Facebook pages, and I mentioned a question about, they're talking about Monster drink. I said, I've never had a Monster drink. And somebody responded, yeah, because you drink Zevia on your after hours. It's like, wow, I'm becoming famous. People know what I drink all the time now, right? So there you go. Also, don't forget to check out the link, the QR code on the computer right now. Boom, right there by my rack, right there. There's the QR code right there. Make sure you check it out. You can buy me a cup of coffee. You can schedule a 15-minute one-on-one Zoom call with me after hours, of course. And you can also access our website, all of our podcasts and stuff like that. It's just a way to help support the show. The show's been going for 2 years now. We got 130 some episodes. 130 some episodes. You can even schedule, like I said, that one-on-one call with me. But of course, it's going to be done after hours. The next thing we always do is the acronym challenge. Here is the acronym for this week. The acronym is ITE. The acronym is ITE. What does that stand for? Let's see if anybody can get this. Shotzi is in the house. Hello, Shotzi. Good to see you again, my friend. Diet Dr. Pepper, as always. Robert Geenan is in the house. Still 3 p.m. out in the West. Yeah, I know. But see here, if I wait till 5 p.m. West, it would be like 8 or 9 o'clock my time. So there you go. That's why I do it at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Nobody has guessed what ITE stands for. It stands for Information Technology Equipment. Information Technology Equipment. That basically is any kind of a device. Very good, Mr. George Humphrey. It's any kind of device that has a primary function of basically related somehow to collecting and transferring and storage or processing any kind of data. Some examples of ITE would be computers, monitors, keyboards, printers, servers, network hubs, all that stuff is examples of ITE. So now we finish that. We'll put away that graphic. Oh, I gotta have my wife do this so I can do this correctly. So now the next thing we move to is the motivational minute. The motivational minute. Today's motivational minute is success is failure turned inside out. Success is failure turned inside out. It's actually from a poem. I don't remember the name of the author off the top of my head, but the title of the poem is Don't You Quit. If you've never heard that poem, I highly suggest that you go read that poem. Very few people experience success without failing. I don't know of anybody. We learn from our mistakes. Just to kind of give you an example, Thomas Edison, the person who invented the light bulb, before he found the right one that worked, he went through 1,000 failures. Did he give up? No. And that's the key. Don't give up. When you experience a failure, you have two options. You can either let it keep you down, knock you off your horse, you can let it keep you down, or you can use that to motivate you to get up and try it again. I suggest you use it to help you get up and try again. Hey, did you catch out last week's show? We talked about digital electricity, not PoE. They're different. Not PoE. We talked about digital electricity. Digital electricity, while it won't replace PoE, it can do better than PoE. It can do up to 1,000 watts. Right? Make sure you check out the show. We brought on a gentleman from Volt Server, and we discussed is digital electricity something that a low voltage person can do, right? What kind of training are they going to need to do that? What all's involved? What pieces and parts? Great show. I highly suggest you watch it. Next week, starting a 2-part series with a famous TikToker, Ed, the old tech guy. We're going to talk about troubleshooting tips for networking. So I hope that you do that. Hope you follow that show. And then one last final thing before we get into the questions. By the way, tonight I have to finish at 6:30 p.m. on the nose. Okay. I'm meeting a peer for dinner tonight. And my wife, I told her I was walking out the door at 6:30 p.m. on the nose. And she said, I'll believe it when I see it. So if at the end of the show, if I just kind of cut off mid-sentence, you know what happened. I won the bet. Okay. Now, you know that I've been on the journey to 1,000 on YouTube. I am at 994. It's only 6 away from hitting 1,000. Six away from hitting 1,000. So if you don't subscribe to my YouTube channel, please go there right now. Please subscribe to it. Weekly content. We come out. The podcast comes out on Mondays. The After Hours is on there on Thursdays. I put out shorts all the time. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, the bell button to be notified, right? I'm just trying to break that 1,000 mark. Nothing's going to happen. My world's not going to change if I hit 1,000. It's just a goal that I set. A goal. If you have to have a goal, if you don't have a goal, you're just putzing through life, right? You're just putzing through life. So please make sure that you go and sign up for that, or go subscribe to that channel, right? So I got this first question here, and this one's coming from, I'm not sure where it's coming from. The gentleman's name is James. I can't tell if he's coming. Oh, looks like he's coming from YouTube. I have a question. Would you promote a union voice data video foreman, among other experiences, with 25 years experience to an assistant project manager? It depends. The union thing, to me, has nothing to do with it. Okay. The union is really good at training people, right? I love unions. I used to be in a union at one point in my career, but to me, the union is not a part of this decision. Can a voice data foreman become a good project manager? Well, actually, he said assistant project manager. Absolutely, I would. But what I would do is I would bring him in as an assistant project manager, and I would have them mentor them for the first 6 months. Have them kind of like they do at the restaurants, right? Where they're the server and they hire a new waitress or waiter, and they mirror them. I think that's what they call it. They mirror them, and they walk around and do everything the other. I would have them do that before I give them a project to manage. And then once they do that 6 months, then what I would do is I would give that person 1 or 2 projects. Not your typical project manager. It's going to have anywhere between 5 and 15 projects at different various stages. So that assistant project manager, I'll give him 1 or 2 projects, but he still has to report everything he does or everything she does to the PM that's mentoring them. People from the field make excellent project managers because, number one, they know when the people in the field are trying to pull the wool over their eyes, right? You know what I mean? Well, boss, we don't do it that way. Malarkey. I used to be in the field. We do it that way. Do it right. So you can't pull the wool over their eyes. But if you have a foreman who is what I call somebody who's very social, right? They have a lot of friends. Some people have that problem making that jump from a foreman to a project manager because now you're their boss. And now the people in the field will say, come on, so what? We messed up and went over the hours a little bit. You're my project manager now. We're best friends. So that's a challenge. Can a foreman do that? Absolutely they can. There are some different skills, though, that you're going to need to know, right? Some different skills. You're already, a foreman's already skilled at installation, certification, right? And even some customer service. But as a project manager on top of that, you're also going to be managing material budgets, managing labor budgets, coming up with risk plans, right? Because sometimes as a project manager, you got to tell the customer no, and you got to be able to back that up. So yes, a foreman can be a good project manager. Absolutely. If they do it right. Did that answer your question, Mr. James? Great question, my friend. Great question. Now, this next question actually came to me from a peer, a fellow RCDD. As a matter of fact, he was in one of my study groups. His name is Jason. And I'm not going to read the entire email, but basically he said that he was running a project and he got challenged by the electrical contractor about the 40% fill for conduit. And the electrical contractor wanted documentation that proved that was the ICT standards. Now, fill ratios, man, it's murky water because we hear numbers all the time, right? 40%, 50%, 60%, 100%. It kind of really depends on what you're talking about. If you look in the code book, the major sections that apply to us, Article 725, 726, 770, 800, 805, and all the rest. There's nothing in there that talks about fill ratios. But in Chapter 9, there is. Now, some people say, well, Chuck, only Chapter 8 applies us. I'm going to do a show on that because technically it doesn't. But in Chapter 9, the very first table number 1, it says that if you have one cable, you have a 53% fill ratio for that conduit. If you have 2 cables in that conduit, you have a 31% fill ratio. And the table finally finishes out and says if you have 2 or more cables, you have a 40% fill ratio. That's what the code book says. Now, the reason this is important is because, right, the standards say that when you design a support system for project, you need to design for a minimum of 3 cables per faceplate. 3 cables per faceplate, right? Because the standard tells us we have to run 2 cables. So that actually builds in some future proofing for your pathway system. I love that term, future proofing, by the way. So you're building in some future proofing. So so if you follow the code book, it does provide some of that for you, right? It does provide some of that for you. But ultimately, that is up to the authority having jurisdiction or the electrical inspector. They're the ones who are going to actually have the final say. Not me, not you on TikTok, right? The electrical inspector. So there is some verbiage about fill ratios in other documents, right? Let's start off with the standards, the 569 pathways and space standard. So it tells us for cable trays, I'm going to kind of veer off just a tiny bit here. For cable trays, you have an initial fill ratio of 25% and a maximum fill ratio of 50%. So when you get done doing the job, your cable tray should not have more than 25% fill. Okay. That gives the customer another 25% to grow over the lifespan of that building, which can be 50 to 75 years. Now, here's the thing. When a cable tray is filled to 50%, when you look at it, the cable is going to fill that cable tray up completely because there's a lot of dead space in between all those cables. So 50% really means the cable tray is full. So 25% means the cable tray is at 50%, is filling at 50% of it. Right? Does that make sense? Now, here's some additional notes. You also want to make sure that whatever cable tray system you're using, or ladder rack system, if it's got the rungs on the bottom, you don't want to stack the cables more than 6 inches, because if you do that, it's going to damage those cables on the bottom. Just going back to conduit, I couldn't find anything in the standards that talked about 40% for conduit fill ratios, right? It gets kind of confusing if you look in this the conduit section in the standards. If you want to look up, it's 9.10.4. It explains how to calculate a fill ratio for conduit, but it finishes that paragraph off and it says, furniture pathways, the maximum fill ratio is 40%. So I don't know why they put that last sentence on that paragraph talking about furniture pathways when that entire section is about conduit, right? But it did seem to kind of mimic that 40% that the code book told us about, right? If you're not sure why they put it there, but maybe I have to have my standards expert come on and actually explain why they do that. Also, there's a lot of factors goes into sizing the conduit, which affects your fill ratio. The number one thing is going to be cable outside diameter, right? The bigger the cable, the less cables you're going to get through it. Another thing that's going to factor is the maximum pulling tension that you can pull on without degrading the cable, right? Either stretching it, twisting the pair twist rates, all that stuff affects the performance. Also, the tensile strength of the conduit, which includes your sidewall pressure. Okay. And the last two final things is the length of the run and also the number of bends in that run. So there's nothing really in the standards that talks about conduit fill ratio. So now that leaves me with one final document, actually two final documents. The first one is the TDMM, the Telecom Distribution Methods Manual. It has 3 or 4 conduit fill charts in there. All right. And now all those, the charts, for example, the first one, which is found on page 5-74, if you want to go look it up, that's a 30% fill ratio chart. So it tells you, Ed the old tech guy, I just promoted your show just a few minutes ago, my friend. So the 30% fill, right? So you can fill conduit up to 30%. The chart gives you all the details, right? But that's based on that conduit being a straight run with no bends, right? Then the next page on 5-75 is the 40% fill chart. So you would look, if you're doing a conduit run and want to know how many cables are running through it, as long as that conduit's a straight run with no bends, you can use that chart if you don't want to exceed the 40% fill. And then the next two charts are 40% fill charts, but one it calculates in one 90-degree bend, and the other calculates in 2 90-degree bends. Because every time you have a 90-degree bend, the number of cables you can put in a conduit system drops. Okay, because in order for that cable to go around that bend, you got to pull the cable a little bit harder, right? And if you pull it harder, again, you're going to change twist rates and stretch copper. That's why those numbers drop. That's why I highly recommend that when you're designing your conduit system, you design them for the maximum performance and for future proofing. So follow the TDMM. Even though technically, unless you're in a contract with a customer and they stipulate that you will follow it, technically there's nothing to force us to follow it. But as a responsible contractor, installer in this industry, you want to be the best, right? There's even in the ICT installation field practices guideline, there's a statement in there too, and I don't remember where I found it, but it's in one of those books, and it basically says the typical maximum fill ratio is 40%. Okay. Now, the last final thing I want to touch about on fill ratios before I drop off the conduit conversation is firestop fill ratio numbers are completely different than conduit fill ratios. If you hear somebody saying, well, that firestop system was done right because look, they didn't exceed a 40% fill. No, that's a conduit number, not a firestop number. So those firestop systems are UL systems. Okay, they're tested by an NRTL, and the fill ratios on those firestop systems can range anywhere from 18 to 100%. You have to look at the fill ratio that's on that drawing. So that throws that 40% number out, right? And if you think it's only 40%, but it's a system go to 100%, you're not utilizing that firestop system to the maximum that it can do. So make sure you know which fill ratio it is that you're talking about. Okay, they are important. The next question, this one comes from Barbara. She goes, I know we can't attach our J hooks to ceiling grid wires, i.e. we must use our own independent wire, but can I hang off the all thread that was installed by another trade? No, you cannot. No, you cannot. If you want to look up in the standards, it's again the Pathway and Space Standard. It's 9.8. It says rods and wires that are currently employed for other functions shall not be utilized as attachment points for J hooks. Okay, so it says right in the standards, can't do it. Now, here's the thing: your electrical inspector might let you do it, but remember, the code is for safety, not for performance. Standard covers safety and performance, so follow that standard. It also tells us when talking about the J hooks, that they should not be placed more than 5 feet apart at random distances. Okay, what that does is that reduces the amount of weight on the bottom of that J hook, so those cables don't get crushed. I saw a TikTok post, Facebook post, and somebody said to install the J hooks 6 to 8 feet apart. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Question number 3. This question comes from Amir. Amir is in Saudi Arabia. Amir and we talk every once in a while. He hits me with questions all the time. That's why I know he's in Saudi Arabia. Amir says, I am designing a building that will house multiple companies. How big should I design the CER? CER. CE stands for Common Equipment Room. It's different from an equipment room. An equipment room serves a building, right, for someone who owns the entire building. A common equipment room means there's multiple tenants in that building, but the entrance facility all comes into one room. That's a common. It's basically an enclosed space for that equipment and that backbone cable and the interconnections that's going to serve that entire building, even though they have multiple companies inside of that. So when you look up in the Pathway and Space Standard, it tells us that there should be and this is because he's in Saudi Arabia, right? There should be a minimum of that common equipment room should be a minimum of 12 square meters. Now, for the rest of us people in the U.S., that's 120 square feet, right? And that's for any building up to 50,000 square meters or 500,000 square feet. If your building's bigger than that, then you got to increase the size of that common equipment room 1 square meter for every 10,000 square meters of building space. Okay. Question number 4. This comes from David. David says, I know category rated cables has a minimum bend radius. Does coax? Yes, it does. Coax does have a minimum bend radius. He didn't mention what kind of coax he was running. If he gave me the actual manufacturer and the model number, I could have looked him up and given him the exact answer for his quick cable, but he didn't. So I just kind of talk about generalities when it comes to bend radiuses. So coax is broken down into 2 major types, semi-rigid and flexible. So for semi-rigid, the minimum bend radius is 2 times the outside diameter of the cable, right? With flexible, it's 6 times the outside diameter of the cable. Now, whenever you're doing any kind of work, whether it's pulling cable, designing cable plants, designing cable tray systems, you really need to verify the minimum bend radius before you start designing or before you start pulling if you're an installer. Because you don't want to, I see this a lot in telecom rooms. You'll see a cable going across the cable tray, and then on the very last rung, they'll do like a 90-degree right out of that thing. That's exceeding the minimum bend radius, right? So it's important to just the installers and important to the designers. Now, one of the good ways to help crews out in the field to not exceed minimum bend radiuses, communications. I told you I have a list of 146 pro tips. Pro tip number 2 on that list, by the way, if you want to go read them, it's on my webpage. Go to letstalkcabling.com. You'll find it. It's in the menus. It's pro series tips. Number 2 is communicate. Now, communicate when pulling cable can happen a couple of different ways, right? It could be something as elaborate as radios, right? Talking about on radios. Or it could be hand signals, right? The key is communicate. Now, for those who don't know the minimum bend radiuses for the other cables, I'm going to go ahead and tell everybody those bend radiuses. For balanced twisted pair cabling, the standard category rated, Cat 5e, Cat 6, Cat 6a, 4 times the outside diameter of the cable. So to find out the bend radius, you find out what the OD is, you multiply that by 4. That's simple. 10 times for backbone cabling. For fiber, that has 4 strands or less, it's going to be 1 inch when it's at rest, just laying in the tray, 2 inches when you're actually pulling it. For intra-building backbone fiber, 10 times the outside diameter when it's at rest, 15 while you're pulling it. Okay. Now, just kind of give you an example of how to run this number. Let's say I looked up a cable and I see that the the outside diameter of a cable is 0.75. It's 3/4 of an inch, right? Let's say it's a backbone cable or something, right? So 0.75 is the OD. I'm going to multiply that by 10. So you really just get out your little smartphone calculator. Not sure where my phone is. You put in 0.75 times 10, and you'll find the bend radius is 7.5 inches. It's pretty easy. 6:24, 6 minutes. For those joined late, I got to stop exactly at 6:30 tonight. I got a bet with my wife because we're meeting up here for dinner. Question number 5. This comes from Vic on Instagram. And Vic says, I need help, Chuck. My cable keeps failing because of excessive propagation delay. I don't know what that is, and I don't know how to fix it. Help! So propagation delay. Propagation delay is literally how long it takes a signal to go from one end of the cable to the other end of the cable. Actually, what it really says is from one end of the transmission path to the other end of the transmission path, right? Yes, I am using my phone for TikTok. Somebody just asked me that in the phone. So that's just how long it takes a signal to get from this end of the cable to that end of the cable. Now, it's the most common problems with propagation delay over a permanent link or channel. One of the first steps you need to do to fix that is, or identify where the problem is. If you have access to the cable footage numbers, right, at the faceplate, write that down. Go to the closet if you can, write that down. Calculate the actual length, right? And then once you know that actual number, go in and look at the test result. Does it match the test result? If it doesn't match the test result, then you need to start looking at why. Maybe when you set up the tester, you selected the wrong grade of cable, right? Hey, hello, low volt Warby. Maybe you selected the wrong category rating cable. Maybe you put in Cat 5e, but you set up the tester for Cat 6. Or the tester was set up for Cat 6 and you forgot to change it, right? That happens quite often too. Also, verify the NVP, right? You can get that from the manufacturer. You can go on the website, make sure that your tester has the right NVP. If that all seems correct, then what I would do is I would go into the test results, right? And I would look at the delay skew numbers, for all the pairs inside of it, right? Now, for a typical 100-foot cable, your delay skew number is going to be 50 nanoseconds, better be less than 50 nanoseconds, right? The lower that number, the better that cable performs. If you have a cable that's measuring 45 to 50 nanoseconds, that's a marginal cable. Marginal. If you're 25, that's going to be considered excellent. The smaller the number, the better. So when you go in those test results, here's what you really want to look for. You want to look at the delay skew for all 4 pairs, right? And if one of them seems really high or way out of whack, right, other the other one, then you know that that's going to be a cable problem. If all 4 of them seem to match, then you really need to go and look at your cable run again. Make sure that there's nothing going on weird there with that. Okay. So that was question number 5. That was all the submitted questions I had ahead of time. Let's check the. Let's see. I think we answered that one already. Yes, I answered that one already. Taylor's in the house. Hello, Taylor. 40% because F and E is now a thing. Because FF and E is now a thing. I don't know what you're talking about there, Robert. You stumped me. I'm going to have to go look that up after the show. It is 6:27. I'm going to cut the show short 2 minutes early tonight because I'm going to win that bet with my wife. I'm going to win the bet. So hope to see you at Bixie. If you see me at Bixie, I'll be there with free stickers. I'll be there with my shirt. I might even give away a couple free shirts while I'm there. Don't know yet. The world's going to go crazy. It's 2023. Till next time, everybody, remember, knowledge is power.